So, this is one of those things where I can't exactly give you a definitive formula. I could, but it would be extremely specialized, as in, I would have to stick to maybe one genre or one specific type of subgenre, even. So, instead, I will be talking about some general guidelines on how to go about the process. So, first of all, you need to know what sort of story you're writing. That means you need to know the genre and you need to know approximately what kind of story it is and the approximate number of characters you'll be dealing with. Basically, you need to know you have X protagonists, Y major antagonists, and maybe Z other characters. Like the Z part doesn't really matter at the start. And now you had to pick them out one by one and start working on their character design individually. So, with any character, the first thing you need is a sort of label to identify them, that is, a name. Naming strategies is a topic by itself, but a good starting point is baby name sites. You'll be getting various baby related ads for the rest of your existence, but the method works. So, let's call our character Alice. So, appearance. Most character design tutorials on YouTube and almost anywhere else start here, but that's because most are geared towards comics and animation. If you're working with a written medium, you don't have to draw your characters if you don't want to. You can write a short paragraph about their appearance and refer to that to keep your writing consistent. And the thing is, sometimes you can get away with very little detail about a character's appearance. This is especially useful if you want your readers to project themselves into your main character. A character's actual character is more important to this, but a very vague description can help. The basic pointers you'd want for a human character are approximately height, maybe something notable about their appearance, maybe notable physical features, general pointers on how they dress, or you could go into more detail, but that depends on the type of story you're writing. Say if you're writing fantasy and your character's appearance gives away details about where they're coming from, then yeah, you could go into detail about that. But you may not have to go into that level of detail about, say, a mystery, unless the appearance is actually important. Also, readers are pretty good at filling in the details. It's one of the things you have to do with books. So you could describe someone as spider-like, and many people would assume it's someone with overly long limbs who is also not too elegant. Or they could assume it's someone who's devious or possibly cruel or scary, but that could be filled in with context clues. Generally, though, appearance is not the most important aspect of a character in a written medium. The key here is consistency. You could use changing appearance for effect, or you could describe the effect of a character's appearance on other characters, but that's about where it stops. Something that is pretty crucial though is basic information on your character. For example, age. Age could be crucial. It sets the audience's expectations about your character, and you can also subvert those expectations by making your character act more or less mature than they should be given their age. And other than that, you may need your character's gender. Whether it's a useful character trait depends on your story. It may not apply at all, or it may be absolutely crucial. You may also need other things that affect your character's prospects directly. So, what these things are exactly depend on your setting, but examples are economic and social status, ethnicity, race. You have to figure out what these are based on your setting. Then another important side to it is the character's personality. But the problem with this is there's no one good way to define this. For one thing, this is going to change throughout the story for at least some of your characters. I mean, that's what makes a story a lot of the time. And for another, how do you exactly define it? For one thing, there's many aspects to it. For example, you could go with openness to change, empathy and who they empathize with. Is there limits to that? Intelligence and how focused the intelligence is, skill level in various areas, how they process experiences, stress response, how introverted or extroverted, and there are many more aspects you can include here. So, really, the best you can do is to write a short paragraph on it as your notes. That is, if you're keeping notes on that kind of thing, and use that as a baseline. You can define a few core traits, say, Alice is introverted, absolutely terrified of spiders, great at drawing, and bad at dealing with people. You can also say she doesn't trust people easily, but isn't completely devoid of empathy. And like that, you have a good starting point. You can explore this more as the story progresses, you can change it, but what you need here at the character design stage is the starting point. Another thing is backstory. You can write a brief backstory for your characters in order to explain why they are the way they are now. Again, the key here is consistency unless you're going for inconsistency. You can make this as brief or as detailed as you want it to be. You can also go back and edit this anytime as long as you don't create inconsistencies with the rest of the story. And another aspect you could explore is a character's relationship with other characters, but this is difficult to determine when you're just creating new characters. An exception would be if your characters are related by blood. I like to leave this open and explore this as the story progresses, but you can define a few relationships that remain static for the duration of the story. Either that, or you could note down how the relationship progresses as a summary, but usually things don't always go exactly as planned when writing, so depends on what type of writer you are. Overall, how detailed you want your character design to be depends on what you're writing and who your character is. If the character in question is there to point your main character in the right direction, you don't need to give them a detailed backstory. In fact, I'd advise against it because generally one has limited time to work on a writing project. On the other hand, your main character may actually need a backstory or at least some indication of what their life was up to that point. Again, not strictly necessary, depends on your work, but it's more likely to be important here. So, as you can see, most of these were very general, very flexible guidelines. Ultimately, the level of character design and the exact aspects of it you need depends very much on the setting and the character, and you need to figure out which apply to your project. So, that's it for my attempt at brief guide on character design. Do you agree with it, or are there any other aspects you'd add? Or is there anything that I mentioned that you think is unimportant? Please let me know in the comments and see you next time.